All right, my big question was, how good are Reggie Love and Josh McCray? What do you think, Joe?
I am pretty high still on Josh McCray. I that freshman season, you don't have a full summer. Like you don't have the spring, the summer, that whole like yearly cycle with just a college football life. And remember, there was a point in his freshman season where he had as close to 600 yards, wasn't it? It was over five. He was like sick and he was out a little bit. But you don't go and do what you did at Penn State. You don't go and put up some of those numbers if you're not good. Is he as explosive as Chase Brown? Probably not. But he's a good running back. And I think Reggie Love showed us, like, he was a good running back in high school, Reggie Love. He was a good recruiting win for Illinois.
Really good recruit win.
And I think he showed us flashes last year. I thought he was kind of tenacious as a runner. There were times you thought he was down and should have been down, and he wasn't. So I like Reggie Love more as a committee back, I think, than like if you were to try to say, go be Chase Brown, Reggie Love, which isn't fair really to anybody, not just Reggie Love. But I think they're fine. Are they the two of the top like 15 backs in the Big Ten? I don't know, man. I think they're good enough to do in a Brett Bielema system and a Barry Lunny system. I think they're good enough to replace the production of Chase Brown with some help from pick a third back.
Yeah. I talked to a scout was at practice the other day, and I asked him, and he said, McCray looks good. He said, I envision him as a bowling ball, but he's lean and exhibited some juice. He's going to be fun to watch. Brett Bielema personally is really high on Josh McCray. It's all about just that mental capacity. Like when you come back from injury, everyone talks about the mental is harder than the physical to come back from. Josh McCray, when he came back from injury last year, he was not mentally ready for it. Like there was just, you don't have confidence yet. You don't have that build up to that game. But talent wise, Brett Bielema told us, like, he reminds him of John Clay. John Clay was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year 1 year. I can see Josh McCray being a bell cow back. He showed us he's got the capability of being a bell cow back. It's not the same as Chase Brown. It's very different than Chase Brown, but he's in really good shape. And from what I heard, he looks really good during training camp. Reggie Love, like, I got to bring up, Thad Ward is not the running backs coach, right? And Corey Patterson did a really good job. You can't argue with the results. Thad Ward had success developing Kendrick Foster and Reggie Corbin. And Reggie Corbin is having a nice pro career in the USFL, right? Like, but there's nothing against those guys. Reggie Love is more talented than those guys. Reggie Love was a top 500 recruit out of high school. Wisconsin was really pushing for him to commit back in the day. He had offers from Tennessee, Nebraska, Notre Dame, Penn State, Iowa, and not all those schools are pushing at that time. But this is a talented guy that is kind of set back by injuries. But otherwise, he's got burst. He's got some power. He's got some wiggle. Like one of my favorite things, he's a really good one-cut running back. So he reminds me a little bit, maybe more physical, of Mike Epstein, who was a really good overall back, just wasn't able to stay healthy. But I thought Mike Epstein could have had a heck of a career if he did. Reggie Love is hungry too. Like this is his opportunity. You saw last year when he got the opportunity, he made the most of it towards the end of the season. And the one thing he has from the staff is trust. They trust him to make the right plays because he's a good blocker. He's good in the pass game. He's a good in between the tackles guy, can bounce it out. I think the thing for him was patience, vision. Chase Brown had to learn those things. I think that comes with reps. I think there's a really good tandem. I don't know if it's a top 5 Big Ten tandem, but under Brett Bielema, I think this group is going to be productive. I think they're talented, and then we'll talk about some of the guys beyond them. I think there's some depth here. So I do think we shouldn't underrate the talent of these guys because Chase Brown, phenomenal. These guys are pretty talented backs too.
Yeah, they are. And the system. I don't think you should go into a Brett Bielema coach team thinking the running game is not going to be at least middle of the road in the Big Ten. I think there's too much work, of a body of work to think otherwise.
And the other thing I think we should bring up, like Brett Bielema and Barry Lunny, unprovoked, like say they're not worried about the running backs. they've kind of
there's not been a lot there, right?
Like, yeah, we're not worried about it. Like the running game's been consistent. Like those guys are, it's like, okay, that's what those guys want. They seem to have confidence, and let's be honest, they have some cachet when it comes to that, some credibility when it comes to that. All right, the depth chart, Joey, sort out the competition. How do you expect the carries to be split between Love and McCray?
50-50 is boring, right? That's a boring approach.
I think it'll change game to game potentially. But I do think if we're talking carries on the team, I think one of these guys, I would probably side a little bit more towards McCray long term here. Gets like 200 carries. The other guy gets like 150.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you've probably got a 50 to 70 roughly combined behind them. However, that maybe not even that much, maybe 30 to 50. Yeah, I think 200 and 150 sounds right to me. I'm with you. I do lean
175 and 125, whatever that looks like.
I do lean towards McCray probably being the one at the higher number, but I think it's going to be a very, very small gap. I too showed up to the party unprepared. What was the gap? The gap last year was ridiculous. It was silly.
I think Reggie Love had like 67 carries.
It will not be that again.
No.
Yeah,
328.
Yeah, so I think somewhere in that 175, 125.
Because taking out the quarterback, there's probably 400 to 450 rush attempts, right?
Yeah, which is why my intrigue is the rest. Like that's where, like, we talk about the intrigue with the backup quarterback. My intrigue for the running back is the third, and how often is the third or potentially a fourth utilized?
All right, plant your flag. Who gets the third most carries outside of Altmaier? Because Altmaier will probably be that guy. Who gets the third most carries out of this running back group?
My brain wants to tell me Aiden Lawfrey because he's so different and he's so fast, and there's a role for he can pass catch too, so I think that probably gives you a little more versatility. He just hasn't been healthy, and
he is now.
He is now, but like there's a history there, right, where he hasn't been. So because of his skill set, I would probably lean towards him. Remember, Jimmy, we thought he was the guy as a freshman who could come in because of that exact skill set, and he's talented. And he's not like he's a twig fast either. Like he's he's kind of a bulked up dude.
They don't let him out of GCMS as twigs. Okay, they got like a college strength program there.
Somewhere Mike Allen, I hope, is nodding. Yeah, man. But I do like Jordan Anderson. I do. I think he's
like Caden Fagan as much as he's talking about him.
Yeah, we should discuss that because Caden Fagan has been brought up a few times by the head coach. I'm going to lean towards Aiden Lawford. I think he's different enough, but I don't feel that confident in doing that.
I would agree with you because he just brings something different. That speed element. Josh McCray is a big back, a bully back, but Jordan Anderson's so big. And I thought his spring was good. I thought his spring was really good.
He's got a lot more wiggle too, dude. Like he is not just a bowling ball. He has got some wiggle. He can catch the ball. That's a tough question, man.
Yeah, and just throwing Caden Fagan into a Big Ten game right away. Like it's the same thing with like Jordan Anderson last year. I just don't think it was fair to be able to play him in some of these games. Now, looking back at it, you probably wish you would have played him in Northwestern and gotten some of Chase Brown's reps late in that game, but you were going for the record with Chase. But that was the opportunity, I thought, to really get Jordan Anderson's feet wet and see what you got there. He's a load. He's a really good pass catcher. And that's one thing about this group that, Chase was a pretty good pass catcher. This group's got some pass catching ability to it. Josh McCray included. Like Josh McCray, his high school film was really good. He had a couple long catches his freshman year. I think this group's versatile. And I think Barry Lunny will use that or should use that a little bit more. I'll be different. I'll go Jordan Anderson just because I really like this spring. But I've had some pause there just because we've seen Brett Bielema talk up Caden Fagan here a little bit. I just think Fagan needs a year. I really do. I think long-term Fagan might be more likely to be a load back there, but I thought Jordan Anderson's spring was really good. And to see him today at practice as the number 3 back in the rotation gives me a little bit more confidence that, yes, Jordan Anderson should get some reps at some point.
Can we just point out that, like, the way that the running back room is right now, Illinois does not get a ton of 4-stars on the recruiting trail. And the way this running back room is they get one who's physically quite an impressive young man, and Caden Fagan. It's like, not yet. Not yet on you. That is the most running back.
Khalil Valentine will be the same thing a year from now. It's like, well, we got Josh McCray, Reggie Love, Aiden Lawfrey, Caden
Some
Fagan.
of that might depend on if Aiden Lawfrey can sit, because otherwise Khalil Valentine's really fast.
Yeah.
So it's a conversation for another day, but the point being, that is a very Brett Bielema running back room thing where it's like 4-star in-state, built like an adult, hang tight. We'll get to you. That is the most Brett Bielema running back room thing ever.
The good news about that, you can play 3 of them, right? You can feed 3 of them if they're good enough. So, and I think this year, I do think they're deep enough to do that. All right, reasonable expectations, Joey. What are your expectations for this group?
Feels weird that all my expectations are going to be middle of the Big Ten. I think it's reasonable to think you're going to get Chase Brown yardage production combined. I think you and ideally would like north of that. You would probably like to be in that 1,800 yard neighborhood if you can. Now, you go back to the quarterback conversation we had. Now you're talking a pretty good offense if you're in that mix.
Well, Illinois ran for 2,161 yards, 4 yards per carry, 18 touchdowns last year. 166 per game is probably the number we should be talking about. Here's my hot take. I think they're top 5 in the Big Ten in rushing this year. I think they're better overall. I think they have more rushing touchdowns. I think they have more rushing yards per game just because they're going to be deeper. They're not relying on one guy. I think the passing game can open up a little bit. I think their yards per attempt can go up a little bit. Like I think Illinois has to be great rushing the ball this year. Again, they were middle of the pack last year. They had one great player who could break off some long runs, but I think they have to be more consistent running the ball this year. And behind Julian Pearl and Isaiah Adams, and I think Josh Kreutz will be solid. I think Zach Chrysler could be really good. I think this is going to be their identity still. Like we can talk about the passing attack, the play action's got to be better, but this is how they win games. So I think they're actually going to rush for more yards, maybe the 175, 180 range. And most importantly, they're going to run for more touchdowns. They had 18 last year. I think that's got to be closer to 25.
Yeah, that's what I was just pulling up the rushing touchdowns because it felt like that's the biggest thing that left a lot to be desired.
And can I mention Luke Altmaier can help here? Like Luke Altmaier's legs, if he can carry the ball 5 times a game, now I'm worried about that because he's a little skinnier. But if he can run the ball and be a threat, that opens up potentially some running lanes for these guys too. And Tommy DeVito at the end of last year, you knew he wasn't going to run for it with that ankle injury.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's a dynamic that I'm wondering how much Barry Lunny dives into and how he dives into it as well. I mean, I'm sure you're going to call some plays for him to use his feet. And it's not going to be all ad lib. So that's a fascinating wrinkle to put into this conversation. But yeah, I'm not worried about them replacing Chase Brown's yardage production. I think that's
crazy because both of us. It sounds crazy, like it was saying it right because he was so good. But I just think overall as a rushing attack, I think they're going to be better. I do because they have more options there. Are we crazy here for saying that?
I mean, probably, Jeremy, but it's 2 weeks into training camp.
We got to have some kind of take, right?
Do we? So, I mean, so you split up the carries, but what's your yardage split? Like, what's an ideal yardage split? Let's go the top 2 and then 3. Like, we don't need to get much further than that, probably.
If McCray and or Love stayed healthy for the entire season, I think one of those is going over 1,000.
You got to, right? Like, there's too much history to suggest there's not going to be a 1,000-yard guy.
What Bielema does. And then, I mean, because remember, Chase Brown did that with 180 carries 2 years ago. And Josh McCray had, 500, and he had some health issues that year. I would go with one guy getting over 1,000, the other guy getting over 650, and another guy getting about 200. And then I think Altmaier, it's weird with the rushing stats. Please take out quarterback stats of sacks of rushing stats. I can't stand that in college football. But I think Altmaier will gain 300 yards on the ground.
Jeremy Werner.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh my
Dude, they love his legs. They love him. I haven't looked at his legs personally, but they like his ability to run.
I can't believe you haven't. That's your next step. That availability. Let's get some calf inspections on this. That's quite the rushing.
I think they're going to be really good running the ball. I didn't know that was a hot take with Brett Beal. I like that they have more options. It's as great as Chase Brown was. And I keep repeating that, but they got more options.
It does feel weird saying all this because
because of the sacks, Altmaier ends up with like 10 rushing yards, but the gain part I think will be above.
It feels really weird saying all this, almost like we're trying to be like Chase Brown. Like it feels a little bit, and it's not the same. I know it's not the same, but it feels a little bit like when Kofi left, and it's like this is good. I know it's not, but it just feels weird to be like Chase Brown's gone. Like it's a very weird feeling. It's not the same, but the feeling is still very like
the take there, Joey, would be more of Tommy DeVito's gone, but they'll be better at quarterback. I'm not there. I'm not there. We talked about that earlier. Or yeah, Devin Witherspoon and Sidney Brown and Quan Martin might be gone.
Forget about them.
They're still going to have a top 10 secondary in college football. No, I'm not. I'm not going to say that. Like, but with their running backs, these guys have a little bit of proven, and I think they have talent, and they have a good offensive line in front of them. It's what Brett Bielema does. So I got confidence.